Welcome to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where real people share timeless ideas. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and in every episode we dive into the philosophies, quotes, points, and life lessons that shape how we live, think, and grow. No matter where you are in life, this show is here to remind you wisdom is everywhere, and it's always relatable most of the times. Tell us your name and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Dr. James Kneller. I'm a cardiologist and a heart rhythm specialist practicing here in the United States in Phoenix, Arizona. Very busy clinical practice, doing ablation procedures in the heart to correct heart arrhythmias or abnormal heart rhythms, and also working with cardiac devices like pacemakers and defibrillators and resynchronization devices in the heart. So that is my full-time occupation and where I spend most of my time. Outside of that, very interestingly, I've been developing founding the Natural Cardiology Institute, goal to bring holistic therapies and natural therapies to individuals with cardiovascular issues, such as high blood pressure or high cholesterol. They're not tolerating traditional therapies like pharmaceuticals, or they're hoping for alternatives to pharmaceuticals. And we want to not only provide the necessary education to help people make that transition, but also natural products that they can take to hopefully replace some of the medications that they've been depending on previously.
Oh, thank you, James, for being the guest on the podcast.
Absolutely. No, it's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, what's the quote you want to share with me today?
Yeah, the quotes I would pick maybe two quotes from the Bible that mean a lot to me and have spoken to me more and more over time. And the first is from John 8:32, and that is that the truth will set you free.
Okay. The truth
A very,
set you
very
free.
powerful and profound statement that you can spend a lot of time meditating on and extracting meaning from. That the obstacles in our lives and the barriers around us and the fake news that's around us, we can find that honest and legitimate truth is genuinely liberating. So the
Yeah.
truth will set you free. And
Well,
go ahead, Wisdom.
yeah. My question is, what's the more like first contemplative moment where it occurred to you, whether it's your career or your life, where the truth actually sets you, like literally sets you free.
Okay. I'm thinking a little bit when I'm trying to solve a problem for one of my
Okay.
patients, for example,
Okay.
and so they're sick, they're coming with a complaint, they have pain, they're uncomfortable, there's something wrong. Um, the pathway forward is the path of truth, and sometimes it's hard to discover the truth about your patient so you can actually help them evolve to the next level and achieve a beneficial clinical outcome. So
Yeah.
I might think of it that way. Um, I think you're asking a deeper question. I hope I'm speaking to it.
Yeah, you're speaking to it. I'm curious, right? Um, because you have an institute called the Natural. I might butcher the name, but Natural. I know it starts with Natural.
Yeah, Natural Cardiology,
Okay, Natural Cardiology, and
the institute.
you also you are a cardiologist, and you studied engineering. I was like the profile is rich.
Yeah, thank you. So I started out studying mechanical engineering, as a first degree. In America, you have to do an undergraduate degree in something before going to medical school. And I started out in mechanical engineering and from there transitioned to a medical career, hoping just to do engineering is absolutely fascinating and it's great for the mind. I just wanted to spend my time working in something that was a little bit more directly with people, if you know what I mean, and
Yeah,
working more directly with individuals' lives and what was important to them personally,
yeah,
rather than the sort of the problems that engineers tend to solve. So that was kind of the motivation for going um, in that direction, and that's another application of the principle: the truth will set you free,
yeah.
and you're try to discover what you're interested in life. And that can be very hard for all of us in that process of self-discovery to learn who we really are and what really floats our boat or makes us excited or wanting to get up every day and go to work. But when you find that truth, it can indeed set you free. and you then liberate energy, and you find potential that you didn't have, and you find that you can stretch and work harder in ways that you didn't know you were capable of, because you have found the truth for yourself, and you're finally pursuing the truth, and you find that energizing because it is in fact setting you free. So that would be another example of how that quote could be applied.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I'm curious. The thing about truth is that usually there are a lot of forces, a lot of people who they don't want the truth, right? Whether it's in business, whether it's workplace, they just don't want you to talk about the truth or anything. So I'm curious, has there been instances
Mm,
where sharing the truth, talking about the truth, has come at a cost for you?
definitely
Okay.
being truthful about situations can come at a tremendous cost, in that you might lose your job, or you might forfeit a promotion, or you fall out of favor politically in an organization, and all of those things can, obviously make life hard for you. The flip side of that is, if you have a commitment to the truth and it does create problems for you, it might be creating problems for you along a wrong path that you might be on. And that might become the stimulus you need to make a course correction and, find something where your truth is appreciated.
Yeah.
But again, that requires a certain commitment, and that comes with a fair amount of risk. And I've certainly been in those situations. A classic thing here in America is many physicians are employed, okay? So they don't
Yeah.
work for themselves, they work for a large organization. And when you work for a large organization, the organization wants you to behave in very specific ways and limit your practice to what is clearly described in clinical guidelines and practice guidelines, and to really be by the book. That's because they don't want any trouble, really. They don't want to get sued, and they don't want complaints, and they want their docs to be fairly homogenous, so they can monitor them and know what they're up to. So then, if you have therapies or ideas of ways to help an individual that might be outside of what
The convention.
appears typical or conventional, you're going to attract negative attention to yourself. But then you think, this is what I've trained for. This is what I've studied. This is what I understand about this individual. And this is a therapy pathway I would like to take them on. You'll get yourself in trouble, for speaking your truth, as it were. So that's something you need to be careful about, and realize, are you just gonna play it safe in the workplace for the sake of maintaining your job, or your position, your income stream,
Yeah.
or are you going to do what it takes to stick to your truth and find an employment situation that allows you now to found your own institute, for example, where you can
Yeah.
start to educate and provide your own therapies. You know,
Yeah.
that's a costly
Um.
process. That's a
Yeah.
costly process. In the long run, if you can take that pain, hopefully you'll get to a point where the reward is obvious to you.
Yeah.
You know,
Uh,
so
yeah.
I would feel that's a good example for myself, transitioning from an employment situation where you feel very limited by the circumstances, and then realizing you can find another situation that gives you the flexibility that you need to move in an independent direction.
Yeah, it's as though you're reading my mind, because that was my follow-up question. I was about asking you,
Well,
what was the inspiration that led to you starting your own natural institute? Because now I'm not so vast in the medical world, but I'm like, you do cardiology, and now you're doing this thing, like the like one is the Western traditional
mhm.
conventional stuff. Another one is natural. Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join, or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation. it's they're all trying to do one thing, but they're different approach. And so I'm curious, what was the inspiration behind you starting this? And yeah, I'd love to know.
Yeah, thanks. I think part of it's being an engineer, and engineers, they want to solve problems. We're looking
Okay.
for the actual solution to the problems in front of us. And so I'm, motivated by my patients. Patients come to me with a problem. As an engineer, I want to find the best solution for an individual's problem so I can help them in the greatest way possible. And you start to learn that conventional medicine, it's very powerful, and in the right circumstances it's absolutely the best thing to do. But you also realize that there's considerable limitations, and it falls through the cracks at times, or it doesn't do root cause analysis, or people have undesirable side effects or too many side effects from the conventional treatments that you recommend. And so
Yeah.
you start to look for better ways to solve the problem. And better ways to solve the problem, I'm finding, is that you have to step outside of that traditional medical model, or be willing to, under certain circumstances. And like I mentioned to you, I was very surprised as an as a physician, a graduating physician, to realize all the constraints that come with employment models, and how many docs are now employed, and how closely you're being watched by Big Brother or your employer, that doesn't give you the
Uncle
flexibility
Sam.
to try some of these other things that you want to try. I mean, it's a real eye opener for me, because you
Yeah.
go into medicine with a perspective from 20 years ago that you grew up with, your perception of doctors being independent and wonderful. They can do whatever they want. They're kind of gods. And then you come out the other end of training and you realize the profession changed while you had your head down and you were learning. We're learning it. So all that is to say, back to your question, the motivation is to find the best solution for an individual. And if that's conventional medicine, then perfect, I've got it for you. If that's something that's more alternative or natural, I'd love to know how to apply those things. And it's very interesting to me. So then I naturally study those things, read around those things, experiment with them myself, and gain my experience with patients, and find that you can give some individuals more satisfying results by going natural. So I want to make that available to folks and be in a place where I can say, hey, you're welcome to step out of the conventional paradigm. I'll work with you, and we can work on transitioning you to as much of natural remedies as is possible. What's
Yeah.
fascinating is when you start to read the medical literature, you realize that there are thousands of published studies, peer-reviewed journals. They're listed on the NIH website. There's studies summarizing 10 other studies on natural remedies. The volume of literature on these things is vast, but they don't make it into conventional clinical practice.
Oh,
Despite the hardcore scientific evidence that's out there, they just do not make it into conventional practice. And
yeah.
so your doctor is not going to offer those things to you. One, they're not taught. Two, it's hard to read up on these things, but even if you're motivated and you do, chances are you're in a work situation where you simply are not allowed to make those recommendations.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
here in America, we worry about being litigious and getting sued, so you need the appropriate disclaimer. You have to say to a patient, we're going to step outside of conventional practice. Things are going to be different. If you're willing to take that leap of faith, I'll work with you, but realize that we're leaving behind guideline directed care, if you will, while we do this stuff. So you have to position yourself right to the patient. You got to be in a job situation that allows you to position yourself like that. Then you have to have the knowledge, which is going to be a little bit self-learned because the system doesn't provide it to you. But be reassured that there are thousands of excellent scientific studies out there for all kinds of natural remedies and substances that really do show remarkable benefit. And
Yeah.
it's exciting to be able to offer those to motivated patients, and
Yeah.
then to have my own product line being one that I trust. So I want to offer a list of herbs for people to lower their blood pressure or to lower their cholesterol. We don't officially know what products contain the natural ingredients they claim to contain. So developing my own product line where I've done my own third-party testing and can then trust those products I can feel very good about suggesting to some individual that they take those things as a natural solution to their problems.
Yeah, you just gave us a timeline of how you approached this institute to start and this endeavor. I want to look at how it felt when because now what you're doing is like you're trying to, what's the word? You're trying to go upstream, right? You're not going the traditional way, right? You're trying to move against the tide. How was it like? How in terms of I know you can't go into so much details, but in terms of starting a national institute, did you get some backlash and all those other things? As a traditional doctor who's trying to do an alternative endeavor.
Yeah, do you get a backlash? You don't want to do anything. I respect the medical licensing boards and my credentialing
Yeah,
boards very much. So you don't want to do anything that would be offensive or raise a red flag. So what you have to, that would be potential backlash. Other backlash could come from your employer if you're an employed doc and they're like, you can't have a website, you can't start anything, you work for us, and while you work for us, you do it our way or it's the highway. So you have to get into a practice situation where your employment environment doesn't stand in your way, and then do things in a way that's consistent with our professional societies, the Arizona Board of Medicine, the different licensing agencies that we're responsible to. And what they would have you do is simply describe to the patient and document that you're going to step into the complementary alternative world, and explore therapies that you believe are safe and effective. And as long as the patient agrees that they are making that transition with you, now you've positioned yourself correctly. So, and you can move forward and then offer those things to the motivated individual. So there's a
yeah,
lot of things that could push on you and could backfire on you for sure. Employers, and if you offend the medical board or do something that someone's going to think is unethical, you're going to get sanctioned. So you got to be very careful, and you don't want to get sued. So you have to disclose to the patient and make sure they understand that you're stepping out of conventional. But if you're willing to move between those guideposts, you can move forward and be very effective.
yeah,
And patients are very interested and very open. And then fortunately, here in America right now, I think we have the most favorable political environment that we've ever had, because now we have Robert Kennedy and the Make America Healthy movement, and he's challenging pharmaceutical companies and food manufacturers and insurance companies and all the whole system of how U.S. medicine is practiced and how the system operates. It's under tremendous amount of scrutiny and challenge from Robert F. Kennedy. So compared to a year ago, we're very much in a climate here that favors challenging the status quo. And
yeah,
I think that only helps someone like me. And hopefully I believe that will echo around the world to a certain extent.
yeah.
That
Wow.
the willingness to challenge convention and to step outside of what's been accepted um, will gain more and more traction worldwide. And
Yeah,
pharmaceutical companies, food industries will be held to a different standard. Get rid of your toxins, lower your processed food, get rid of the dangerous dyes, substances that the genetically modified, ingredients that you're
yeah,
including in your product. Move away from that because the pressure's there. And I think the world often to a certain extent follows America's model. So hopefully Robert Kennedy is successful, and he claims that the food companies are starting to rein in their practices in response to his pressure. And I hope it ripples around the world. I hope it succeeds in America, but I can feel that it's making opportunities that I'm pursuing more favorable. The climate's much more favorable as a result of that. So
yeah.
let's hope
Wow.
we can get enough done.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the key things I take from the story you've shared so far is the fact that a lot of time people get obsessed with the process, the system, the things in place, instead of the solutions or the persons that they're trying to solve the problem for. All right, like in terms of some instances, in terms of conventional medicine, they're like, oh, this is the way it's done. I'm like, why are we doing it this way? Right? There's a problem that needs to be solved. And what's important is that we solve that problem, whether we use conventional medicine or we use natural medicine, as long as the problem has been solved, and solved without side effects or backlash, which is very important, because sometimes you solve a problem and then another problem comes up. That's another topic entirely.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I completely agree with you. In the pure problem solver, somebody thinking the truth will set you free, very
Yeah.
much the engineer's mind frame is always challenging and always saying, we're solving a problem with a certain strategy, but tell me let's look for something better and let's look for something more effective. And as the world changes and as technology progresses and we learn more scientifically, yeah, we got to change what we're doing when the opportunity presents itself, and not just be stuck in our ways, which is the problem in America. America's used to a certain number of diseases. It's developed a lot of treatments for those diseases. Those treatments were expensive to develop, and some people are making a lot of money by applying them.
Yeah.
And if the model changes, that whole business enterprise is upset. So then that business enterprise is going to push back and say, no, don't do this. Keep the diseases the way it is. Don't cure the disease, because then we won't have a business. Keep the patient sick so they have to continue to need our drug. And these are the paradigms that really need to get challenged. I'm optimistic that Robert Kennedy is pushing that forward in a way we've never seen or heard political leadership talk about in the past. And that's exciting, and it's absolutely the way we need to be. We discover a cure for diabetes, or we're discovering cures for, but nobody wants to acknowledge it, or it's not official, or the evidence isn't substantial enough. So we have to continue to push these drugs, and you're negligent if you don't insist on certain therapies for certain individuals. But when really the system that's holding it back it's profit motivated,
Oh, thank
which
you.
is unfortunate.
Thank you so much, James. Just as a final closing note, there's a saying that when we give advice, we're giving advice to our past self. So on that note, knowing what you know now, and with all the experience and everything you've had now, what advice would you give to your younger self? More, just as a final closing note.
I would say, believe things are going to work out. Trust that your dreams will come true. Work hard, but be patient, and be politically as a student as you go along. Pick your battles. Not every battle needs to be fought. Wait for the ones that really matter, and don't burn up all your political capital in minutia.
Wow, thank you so much. Where can listeners learn more about you and the projects you're working on in the Natural Institute and all those things you mentioned in the conversation?
Yeah. So our website is www.naturalcardiologyinstitute.com. I would tune in there. I'm James Kneller, MD, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. Just, subscribe to our channels, like us, follow us, and a lot of information is going to be forthcoming on those social media outlets and on our website.
Wow, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you, James.
Yeah, you too, Wisdom. Thanks. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who loved the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatablewisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.